Hello everyone and welcome once again. This is the third time we have the opportunity to talk to our USMCA expert Kellie, all the way from the US West Coast. And I am super excited that she could join us again here at Customs Manager. Now, we're building the largest community of empowered customs managers around the world and global trade professionals. We're excited about customs, about export controls, and of course, trade agreements. And that is the focus of today. With the USMCA being only a couple of days away really now, we want to find out how we can leverage this great opportunity and what the changes are. Now, at Customs Managers, we want to empower you. So this is a contribution to it. We do this through three things: professional legislative monitoring, ongoing education and support, and of course, first-class services to help you grow your business compliantly, efficiently, and effectively. Now, Kellie here is very special because she's got her own podcast. And by now, you may have already listened to it. But in case you haven't, Kellie will tell us very quickly, hi Kellie, what this is all about.
Yes, thank you for having me. The podcast is special because it is focusing on all of the different aspects of the trade industry and all of the different careers that exist within the industry. It's a pretty interesting career for me, and I wanted to share that by highlighting all of the women in leadership positions that make up this wonderful area, this wonderful industry.
Thank you. That is a really great introduction. And I should have mentioned, of course, you are a licensed customs broker and U.S. attorney. We've already been talking for the last couple of weeks. And today, really, we want to focus a little bit more, don't we? How can we continue to save under this new agreement like we did under NAFTA? How do we make sure we don't lose the opportunity to lower duties? And over the long term, maybe we can even improve the profit margin on our products even more. So if we wanted, so the focus of today should be really trying to see how can we keep reducing total landed costs from the 1st of July. And all I really want to ask you to start us off with is, if that is the objective, right? So improving profit margin and benefiting from the USMCA, which part of the agreements should importers, exporters look towards?
Right, yes. So typically when a new free trade agreement is enacted, the most impactful part is the elimination of duties. And you mentioned, you alluded to this, but USMCA isn't necessarily eliminating duties because that was already done under NAFTA. So basically in this regard, we are just continuing, as you stated, the reduction of duties for imports coming into the region, in the different countries within the region. So it's just a little bit different than other free trade agreements that we see coming into force. But in order for companies to continue recognizing this duty impact, I think the biggest changes that we see under USMCA have to do with the elimination of the certificate of origin under NAFTA. The actual prescribed format under NAFTA is no longer necessary under USMCA. And then the biggest impact for users of the agreement would be the rules of origin, because the rules are changing on how to play the game, and it could be impactful for some industries.
Can you give us a quick recap on what are these rules of origin and why do they matter?
A rule of origin is the standard by which you determine whether a product is eligible for duty-free treatment. It's the process to determine whether a product has been sufficiently processed within the region to be eligible for duty-free treatment. One example is that wouldn't be sufficient processing would be when you bring in orange juice concentrate, and then all you do is add water to it in the US. It doesn't all of a sudden become US origin orange juice. I mean, it was orange juice concentrate before you brought it in, and all you're doing is adding water, so that isn't sufficient processing, as the term is used. So the rule of origin has these requirements that manufacturers have to meet in order to say, yes, this is a product of Canada, it meets the standards, so that when you bring it into the US, it does it is eligible for this duty reduction, this tax reduction on the imports. What's interesting about the rule of origin for USMCA is that we see changes from NAFTA to USMCA in the rules of origin, but we also see them stay the same. So I just wanted to reiterate that there are some rules, some products that actually have no changes under USMCA, but there are many products, many industries that are significantly affected by these changes.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, first of all, what are rules of origin, and secondly, that there are changes, but then there are also no changes. So it's actually really depends on the actual rules of origin and the sector that you're in.
Yeah.
You mentioned orange juice. The one sector that gets talked a lot, and I think we mentioned it even in our last meetings, was the automotive sector. And we hear that they are most impacted when it comes to the rules of origin. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the rules of origin for the automotive sector.
Sure. In my opinion, the rules for the automotive sector under NAFTA were already complex. There were a lot of standards that the automotive sector had to meet in order to be able to claim NAFTA. And so under USMCA, it's just increased that complexity even more. And the reason, or the way that the USMCA makes it more complex, is that it requires the products to have a higher percentage of originating content in order to qualify for USMCA treatment. And so before USMCA, it was still a pretty high standard that automobiles had to meet, but now they even have to increase that even more and have to use more local content, more content that originates within the region, Canada, US, and Mexico. And so that could affect the eligibility of some of their products. It could cause them to have to adjust the supply chain. It could cause a lot of disruption for them to, still recognize this benefit. But also, I think we mentioned it in prior weeks, that automobile manufacturers will also be subject to this labor value content requirement, which means that their rules require a specified percentage of vehicles to be produced with high wage labor, which we haven't seen in a free trade agreement. And so the difficulty of understanding that, of applying that, and enforcing that remains to be seen. It wasn't something that they were used to doing under NAFTA, but is now something that they need to take into account under USMCA. So that adds that level of complexity. That's why I think they are the most affected industry.
But if I understand correctly, they have a bit of time still, right? This all doesn't come into force on 1st of July for the automotive sector. It is the transition period, is there?
Correct, right. So there is a certain implementation period for them. And as of the time of recording this, we are seeing a request or an opportunity for that phase-in period to be extended. So it remains to be seen exactly how that will be applied, but there is a grace period, and it could even be longer if granted by the government.
Good to know. Well, I'm looking forward to see what actually will happen, and how you enforce this labor requirement. Sounds complex, even a little bit more complex than under NAFTA even. What other changes in rules of origin do we see under USMCA when compared with NAFTA?
Putting the automobile industry aside, in my opinion, it seems like the other rules of origin for other products seem to be more relaxed, meaning that more products could qualify because the rules aren't as strict. They don't require such a high level of transformation of goods, and so that is good news for most other users of the agreement. Many of those rules are actually easier to comply with. And one example would be in the chemical industry. So that would be Chapter 28, 29. There are additional rules that allow for status under the USMCA that didn't exist under NAFTA. So because chemicals are such a highly specific type of product where there are the actual chemistry part of this transformation standard, I think they recognize that those are different than any other product, and so they in this agreement they included a different set of rules. So it seems to be more relaxed, and it allows for more of these chemical type products to qualify under USMCA, and it's not something that we saw under NAFTA, so that's good news. And then generally most of the rules that I've had to deal with are either easier to qualify under, meaning they allow for a broader definition of what this substantial change has to be, and so that would allow for products maybe that didn't qualify under NAFTA to now qualify under USMCA, and then be able to actually claim that duty-free treatment.
Wonderful. That very good. Thank you. So we looked at a few sectors here and quite a few changes that are occurring. One of the changes that because I'm mindful of the time, that I quickly want to talk to you about, and that is on many people's mind, is this innovation, this modern technology bit, this part where we do away with administration, it seems, because the paper disappears. How shall we do it if not with a certificate of origin? Under NAFTA, beautiful form, I know exactly what to complete. I just need to download it, write it down, complete it, and be done with it. Now you're telling me this is all thrown out of the window. I am now so confused as to who has to do what in order to prove that I meet these rules of origin. I hear about data points, I hear about certified paragraphs, statements of origin I need to make. You are the one that needs to clarify this for this world. Tell me what happens with NAFTA certificate of origin, and why do you want to eliminate something so beautiful?
Sure. So NAFTA actually was one of the few agreements that still exist that required a specific format of the certificate. It seems that most free trade agreements have gone to this modernization of, okay, it doesn't have to be in this format with these blocks, prescribed format. Now we're moving to a minimum data element type process, which we see in most modern free trade agreements. So it was essentially just a modernization to get it onto the same playing field as other free trade agreements. So it's supposed to make things easier, but as with all disruption, it probably will create some confusion at the beginning. But the idea is that instead of having a particular format, all we need to know is the important data points, and that is, who is the person certifying that this is eligible, what is their contact information, what is the detail of the products that you're claiming preference, and like you said, there is a certification statement that I certify that these goods do qualify and the information is true and accurate and all of that. There does have to be a signature and a date. It just doesn't have to be in the CBP form that was required under NAFTA.
If I may, there is one more question I had that has just come to my mind, and that is about who can issue these statements of origin on whatever paper or whatever form you have. And I think under NAFTA it was the exporter only, and I think that changed too. Is that right?
right? There was a change. So under NAFTA, the producer and the exporter were the parties that could create this certificate. And under USMCA, the importer is allowed to create this certificate based on the fact that they have the knowledge that's necessary to make the claim, right? So it just adds a little more flexibility in the agreement so that if a party does know that a product does qualify, they don't have to actually have a piece of paper from the exporter saying that. The importer is allowed to do the administrative piece of creating the certificate. So that's another example of modernization, another example of expanding the eligibility, expanding or lowering the requirements of actually utilizing the agreement.
Wow, it sounds like this is quite exciting actually. If everybody else can, but more people can make these statements if they do it right, of course. So it gives more flexibility, gives more usability, more user friendliness. I think. Do you know what? The more we talk, Kellie, every week we talk, and the more excited I get. I mean, I can't wait for 1 July now. Do you think we should, make it a USMCA party just to celebrate a little bit the entry into force of the USMCA?
Yes, I think so. I think it's exciting. I think it, it's kind of the first big agreement that is coming into force while I've been, part of the industry, and so it's pretty exciting. So yes. USMCA party would be quite fun.
Yes. Okay, great. Let's call for that. I say 1 July, we're gonna make the biggest virtual USMCA party, and we're gonna have all our friends from America, USA, Mexico, Canada, Europe, the world join us. All right, but for now, I think we talked a lot, we said a lot, and it was so useful again to have you on and to talk to you about the specifics now, the certificate of origin, elimination, and also the rules of origin, including granular detail as for the automotive sector. Now, I know you're keen to have a bit of a disclaimer, so I'm going to let you say that. And if you want to remind us again of how we access your podcast, that would be great. I can't wait for the USMCA to come into force now because I feel absolutely ready with all the good information that you shared with us. So thanks once again, and the word's yours.
Thank you. Yep, just a disclaimer, make sure you get your information from more than one source. I can't guarantee that I have all the answers, so make sure you do your due diligence. But also, if you're interested in the industry, trade industry, and customs law, tune in to the podcast and hear about all the different roles that exist and all the great women in leadership in the podcast called Women in Trade. You can find it on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and a bunch of different other platforms as well. Thank you.
Thanks again. See you next time. Bye.